What does a bike fitting do versus what does it not do?
Well, a good bike fit will put you in the most efficient position possible, and you're preventing injury.
Welcome to the Prehab Podcast, where we dive deep into expert insights, connect with industry leaders, and share real stories to help you take a proactive approach to your health. I'm Craig Lindell, a doctor of physical therapy and co-founder of Prehab. And today, we're chatting with Lauren Mulwitz, a biomechanics expert and bike fitter who combines her academic background and racing experience in her work. Together, we'll be discussing how we crossed paths on my way to Ironman training. We'll also talk about Lauren's journey to where she is as a bike fitter today, the value behind a bike fitting, and what it will versus won't address, and what the future holds for consumers looking to get a bike fitting. If you're a cyclist, a triathlete, or any kind of bike rider, I know you'll enjoy this one. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in today. Lauren, thanks for coming to Prehab HQ today to hang out, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about all things bike fitting. A little bit of background. How did Lauren and I meet? A year and a half ago, well, I decided to get into Ironman training, and I had to get a bike. I also had to figure out how to get fitted on that bike. I knew that I'd be spending a lot of time on that bike. And then cross paths with Lauren. Lauren, actually, I'll let her tell a little bit more about her background and her story. But where Mike Arash and I actually got our doctors of physical therapy, Lauren also got education as well at USC. So probably cross paths in the same hallways at some point. But yeah, Lauren, feel free to introduce yourself and tell us more.
My name is Lauren Moritz, and I am a bike fitter and cycling analysis professional in LA, but mostly in the South Bay. I see people, and my background is in biomechanics and motor control, and I have a undergraduate and then graduate degree in kinesiology, and been practicing bike fitting for 12 years. And also a racer, and actually I took a hiatus in 2018, but just practicing bike fitting and applied biomechanics. Yeah.
So usually when we're hanging out, it is, hey, in the door, out the door, pretty busy. I know you've been especially extra busy lately, which is a good problem to have. But I'd like to hear more about this racing history, because every time I've been at your shop, I see a jersey and I'm like, okay, she looks fast. She definitely raced.
I used to be faster.
I want to hear about this just because we haven't talked about it before.
Yeah, I started in 2011 and went actually into a bike shop and just picked up a bike and didn't think about racing. I was just riding, and there's just such a good contingent of riders in LA and really good group rides. So I ended up riding with those people and just getting into racing, getting interested in it. Mountain biking really called to me more than road racing, and LA has a lot of crit racing. It's actually a pretty popular race. It's a style of racing where you're like riding around and kind of like more of a track, going around in circles, basically, I say. And it wasn't really my calling. I think mountain biking was more my calling. So I got into that and started racing like longer distance endurance races. And then I accidentally actually raced nationals. Like I was on my way to another race and then found out that nationals was in Mammoth and decided that I was going to race it, and then just so happened to have a good day and win. So I did a lot of like longer distance stuff afterwards, and then probably will start racing again shortly, doing like endurance, like 100-mile races.
So, I do have a couple Ironmans coming up, but then the goal is in the summer. I just want to like part task the full Ironman. I did a marathon. This past weekend, I actually ran a half marathon.
Oh, yeah.
I used to think that I ran the marathon. I didn't run the marathon. I did the marathon because there was a lot of walking and running versus this past weekend, I legit ran a half marathon. So the goal was this summer, part task the full Ironman, do a 2.5-mile open water swim, do a 112-mile bike ride. So we got to connect for a good ride.
Yeah.
Show me where to go, what to do.
Yeah, there's plenty of it. Santa Monica Mountains are right next to us, and then Palos Verdes is gorgeous. Like we live in such a amazing area for like road and mountain.
So then after you were done professionally racing, because you turned pro
Mm-hmm.
in the mountain biking cross country discipline,
Yeah.
and then you transitioned to endurance road racing, because I feel like that's how I found you.
Yeah, I think I turned pro the year after I won nationals and just like realized it was much harder. It was a huge jump and was just like winning all of my amateur events and then went to race with the big girls and I mean, got my butt handed to me, like very humbling, but it was a good experience. And then I had some friends that are doing it like on another level. So I got to hang out with them and see how they trained. But yeah, I think I mountain bike raced for a couple years and then road racing, not so much. I kind of stopped doing that. I just wasn't enjoying it as much.
Were you doing it by yourself, like on a team, or did you ever do triathlons?
I did triathlons early on, and then for like 3 years, and then that's a lot of training. Swimming, biking, and running is
Yeah.
not easy. It's a lot of work and strength training off of that. I think with work getting really busy, I just decided to focus on one thing, which I think was my strength, was biking.
Got it.
But yeah, triathlons first, then the road racing, and then more mountain biking after that.
Got it.
So, and then right now we have so many good group rides that I just do those and yeah, stay in shape doing that.
Yeah, I'm realizing that training is a little bit more fun when you do it with other people
Yeah.
versus when you're just constantly training by yourself. It's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
some of it's good, but then when you do a race like the LA Marathon, there's so many people around you, you get fired up, and then you can push it. And other people are pushing you.
I actually ran the LA Marathon when I was 11, which I forgot to tell you. Yeah, my dad had bought a number, which he can't even run a mile, and decided that he was like, I'm not going to run the night before, because he said he had an injury.
Uh-huh.
And then he gave me his number and put me on the starting line in 1991, I think. And then I ran most of it and walked some of it, but I remember finishing. It took me like 5 hours or something, but yeah.
That's insane.
Said it was child abuse, actually. Yeah.
Well,
so,
you've been,
but I haven't done one since.
You were born to do endurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then let's transition to how I met you. And that was, getting a bike and doing a bike fitting.
Yeah.
And it was a beast, even. Like you just mentioned, hey, training, it's a lot. And for me, I grew up on bikes. That's how I got everywhere. It was like, okay, well, my parents worked and then they retired at the end of the night. And if you want to go out, it's like, well, walk there or bike there.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up riding bikes everywhere. That's actually what I felt most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And then running, I mean, granted, it doesn't take much equipment to run. Swimming, it was also, I knew that I wouldn't drown, but I need to like practice swimming. But then biking, I mean, you hear what kind of bike do you get? Do you get a road bike? Do you get a tri bike? And then, okay, you got to get fitted.
There's so many.
And here's why you should get fitted. So I'm fortunate that I came across even finding you. But
thank you.
But yeah, I mean, of course, the bike fitting has been super valuable for me. But I'm like curious from your perspective, that journey, what eventually got you into bike fitting? How did you get there?
I had a biomechanics degree, and I was always interested in applying that and not staying in academia, because they put you on this track, master's degree, then PhD, and I was going to do research or be a professor or kind of both. And then I decided I wanted to learn more about applying biomechanics. So I didn't know bike fitting was an actual job. So I ended up apprenticing someone named Stephen Carre. He owned a shop called Bike Effect in Santa Monica, and then just kind of fell in love with it. Like, he was really good at his trade. So I got very lucky that he trained me, and then just good with people, he just knew if you did one thing, how it affected something else. And he was very intuitive, not even trained in kinesiology at all. He was self-trained, but I think I just got really lucky learning from him and learning how to do bike fitting more comprehensively. And then there's like a structural exam and like using the biomechanics off the bike first and looking at their injury history and then focusing on the fitting. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And then it just built on itself. And eventually I was working at USC in the biomechanics lab, looking at the effects of yoga on joint stability and balance. So we were doing a study, and then once it was done, I kind of just segued to bike fitting, and then it became my full-time job.
Back in 2012, like, were you still in undergrad?
So I was in grad school. I'd finished undergrad. My master's degree was at UMass Amherst, and then I went to USC for more work. And so I was kind of in like this period of like, should I finish my PhD or should I go back and do something? I wanted to work in the industry and apply it. So I just didn't know what kind of job that I was going to do with biomechanics.
Would you say that you were interested in kinesiology and that's what kind of eventually like, hey, I also like biking and kind of want to get into bike fitting? Or
I think so, yeah.
do you feel like riding actually made you interested in learning more about your body?
I think riding actually like got me more interested in bike fitting. I think it's also just the way that his methodology and his technique of fitting that really got me excited, because I had some fits before that weren't, they just put you on the bike and like adjusted some things. Yeah. He was more scientific about his approach to fitting. So I got more excited because I'm like, I can use my education to like apply this to fitting. And then, he was doing it, a couple fits a day, every day of the week. So I figured out, okay, this is a job. Like I can sustain this. And yeah, nice. Yeah, because you don't know that when you're in grad school.
Yeah, I mean, even like growing up, it was like, okay, there's 2 things that I can change. I mean, maybe 3. I can play with the tires, or I can like twist the handlebars forward or backward, or raise the seat. Because it was, hey, BMX bikes, we had dirt jumps in the woods that you go to, grew up in Jersey, and it was just like, okay, that's what I can change here. Or if I want to like go faster or feel better, just get a different bike. Versus when I met you, it was like, oh, okay, I signed up for a bit off more than I can chew with kind of understanding what I can do here and what to focus on.
Yeah, and I think technology has changed too with bikes. Like they've become a lot more, you have electronic shifting now. You have disc brakes versus rim brakes. There's like the geometry has changed, and especially with time trial bikes, it's like much more complex. So I think that technology changed quite a bit since you were a kid, but yeah, it's very interesting. There's so much in geometry. Like I didn't understand any of that before I was a bike fitter. I really had to learn, and using tools. Like I came from an academic background, so I wasn't using any torque wrenches or any tools or anything. So I had to learn all of that in the bike shop.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew that there would be value in getting a bike fitting, especially because, hey, I got to ride almost 60 miles in a race. I'm going to be spending a lot of time on this bike, doing it after swimming, and then I got to get up, and now I have to run a half marathon. I better be comfortable on this bike, but then more importantly, I better be fast on this bike. So I also went into that fitting knowing my own body, having some like previous medical history, or at least some knowledge of my body as to like, hey, be mindful of this and whatnot. But, there was so much value that I took away from that bike fitting. And even now, after I got the second bike, because I started with the road bike, I was like, all right, before I put a big investment into the sport, let me even make sure that I like it. I still like the road bike. It's great. But then, okay, after I did it, I'm like, all right, let's get a faster bike and let's get the race bike, which complete different beast in terms of tuning. But I'm curious, like, let's transition into really the value of a bike fitting. Like why should people even consider getting access to a bike fitting?
I think the way you did it was right, to have a pre-fitting and like fit first, buy later, so you know what geometry fits your physiology, because it's really important. Like I look at someone's injury history, what they want, what their goals are, what they're looking for, and then it's take all their measurements, make sure that they're in the right shoe for their foot, that their contact points are dialed, like they're on the right saddle for their pelvic structure. All of that stuff's important to get out of the way first, and then you put them on the bike and adjust everything. So,
dialed.
But yeah.
We were talking about this before. People love that word, dialed, and then that's the name of your business, Dialed dialed in fitting. So
Yeah.
what made you pick that word, and why do you think it's such a buzzword?
I didn't even pick it. It was someone that, like, I literally sat down with someone, this guy named Joe Yule, who did all my branding, and I didn't have any logos or anything. And I'm like, he's like, write down 50 words that best describe what you do. So I did that. And then he designed my logo. He picked the name out, and I was like, yeah, I love it. The first take, it was like, yeah, that's perfect.
Nice.
But it's definitely a buzzword and has become more of a buzzword.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people, when, they bring their bike into a shop, are like, can you dial this in? Like, the mechanics are like, okay. Like, it's just like a buzzword. I guess. Yeah.
So what is it that you do? Because I can sit here and try to describe what your day looks like, but what does a bike fitting look like? And like, what does a bike fitting do versus what does it not do?
Well, a good bike fit will put you in the most efficient position possible, and you're preventing injury. So I do a structural exam first and look at everything, all your measurements, flexibility, range of motion from head to toe. And then I go through your injury history in pretty good detail. So I know if you've had a cervical fusion or L4, L5, S1 slip disc, which is common, that we don't put you in a position that's too aggressive. So that stuff is all done in the beginning of the fit. And then like there's a structural assessment, similar to what a PT would probably do when someone comes in, because you have to kind of know their body, talk to them about their goals, like what they're looking for, what kind of rider they are. Because I fit cycling, like brand new people and then racers, and like there's a whole continuum. But yeah, do all of that stuff, make sure they're in the right shoe, cleats are set up properly. A guy came in yesterday had a big leg length difference that was structural. So I had to put a shim in under one cleat. So that kind of stuff is important because the bike's a very symmetrical machine. And if they're like have a unique, organic, non-symmetrical physiology, then it's a repetitive sport. You want to make sure that like you've accounted for all of those asymmetries as best as I can in my scope of practice. And then I put them on the bike and I adjust everything. And the thing I like about having a studio is I can take video of them and use like visual feedback. So I can go over posture and their pedal stroke. So if they're like not efficient, then we can go over things to make them more efficient.
Yeah. I know we got good video too that we can share in the video of just like, hey, what it looked like the first time connecting with the road bike versus recently with the tri bike, because it's two different. I mean, it's very different. Like riding a road bike versus the tri bike.
Yeah.
It's just very, very different. What would you say? So you mentioned scope of practice. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think you excel in the bike fitting? When someone reaches out and they want to get a bike fitting done by you, what do you look forward to doing the most?
What do I excel in? I like the structural exam and their anatomy, and kind of everybody's a different individual. So I don't try not to take a cookie cutter approach and treat everyone differently. I'm not a doctor, but I definitely look at their body and the like what's going on, what their main concerns are, as far as like if they have knee pain or back pain on the bike. If it's outside my scope of practice, I refer to someone like you, a physical therapist or a chiro or some kind of physio, if they have like significant pain that I know is probably not caused by the bike fit. An example would be like weak glutes, which is very common, or pelvic rotation, or lower back pain that could be also from other aspects of their life, like their work environment or just, structural component or muscular component. So if it's outside my scope of practice, I try to refer out. But from the bike fitting perspective, I like puzzles. Yeah. I really like when someone comes in and it's like I can just like figure out what's going on and then put them on the bike and put them in the best position possible.
And that's what I enjoyed about our experiences. We did the fitting, we did the pre-fit, and then you're like, hey, just go get one of these bikes, and then just start riding and tell me how it feels, and let's fine tune if we need to. But I remember even the first few times I was riding, I was like, okay, my left foot is buzzing, my toes are buzzing pretty good, And like I've tweaked a disc in the past, and I was like, okay, do I just need to get comfortable riding in this position? Do I have to get used to this? Because it's definitely different than a normal like BMX bike. I remember I got on it, I clipped in, and the handlebars were wiggling, and I was like, I'm about to eat shit right now. So even just getting balance on the bike was like, this is very different. But let me just even trust Lauren with the setup that we went with. But then it was really nice to just even be able to text and be like, hey, is this normal? Or when we linked up, you're like, hey, can you be a little bit more engaged and active in the saddle position, or can you hinge, right? So I thought that was really cool with the fitting. Not only are you trying to fit the person to the bike or the bike to the person, but you're also trying to teach them how to be positioned and engaged on that bike. And then if they're not capable of doing what it is that you're looking for, then like you're saying, hey, okay, maybe call in some reinforcements and get help from someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hardest part, is getting them to do the work off the bike, because I can fit the bike to the body. Definitely fit the bike to the body, not the body to the bike, but getting them to like strengthen their glutes, or knowing that they have hand numbness because they have a weak core. It's like, or that's a contributing factor. Like getting them to do work off the bike is important.
Yeah.
So,
And that leads me to the next question of what, it's funny, we were saying dialed in earlier, and I feel like it couldn't be more pun intended, but what grinds your gears when it comes to someone wanting something fixed with a bike fitting, but you're like, yo, this is not going to solve the problem?
I think people sometimes have back pain, and it's often related to the saddle, or a not as strong of a core. So me being able to do the best job that I can do 100% and like change their saddle, but that's not, something that they want to do right away. It's like, that's limiting me from really doing the best job I can do, because I know that they lack pelvic stability on the saddle. So, or it's not good for their blood flow. Or like strengthening their glutes to take pressure off their knees. I've literally had people that they're like, oh, my PT, I had knee pain. My PT said to strengthen my glutes, gave me some exercises, and it went away just from that. Nothing changed with the fit. So it's nice when people can take some of my advice and like, that's like, it's either a combative person sometimes that just like, let me do my job.
I feel like I came one time, and it was either you were finishing up with someone that was combative, or they were coming in next, and I was like, oh, this guy looks like a pain in the butt a little bit.
I mean, it's just, there's different people in this world. Yeah. But it's nice when someone trusts me to do my job.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you were racing compared to now, like, of course, prehab, preventive, rehab, do the things that you need to do before you're hurt, do the things that you need to do before you're injured. Do you have any interesting stories, or like, hey, I wish I knew then what I know now?
Exactly.
With your body, racing versus now?
Yeah, I wish I knew then what I knew now, because I didn't do any preventative stuff, no strength training. I was just biking. I would probably do a lot more core strengthening and glute strengthening and work off the bike, even breathing techniques that I didn't know that I know now. I haven't really had a lot of significant injuries. I've broken one rib in a mountain bike race, but I've had 5 concussions.
Really?
Yeah, from like mountain bike racing, going over the bars. So,
oh boy,
it's hard to prevent that, but it's usually when you're tired and you just like front load the bike and or you're on a really technical section or something. But I haven't like had any other injuries. Knock on wood. Okay.
I mean, that's how a lot of people find us. You can relate it to anything in the world, right? Like there's a hurricane that blows through a city. Well, then sales spike after the fact with all these preventive measures on people's houses.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost to value preventive measures, or to value being proactive about something, you have to be dealing with a problem. and just because humans, it's why fix what isn't broken. But, do you see a shift in the cycling community, which we can talk a little bit more about? Like, again, I felt like such an outsider going in.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea where to look, how to even find someone like you. But do you see a shift in what cyclists and other endurance athletes value when you were racing compared to now?
I think there's more, like, social media has made it a little bit more, like, people probably value bike fitting more, and especially pre-fitting more, and getting like that hour appointment with the fitter where they're getting a good consult, and like they know what they're supposed to buy and all the components. They have more information before they buy a bike now. Yeah. Certainly people who get a pre-fitting, it's so much better than someone bringing in something and me saying, oh, you need a different crank arm, or different bar width. So it helps a lot.
A big thing for us is access, really our reason to exist. Everything that we do at this company and at HQ is all about redefining access to physical therapy. So that's why, we're so focused on the mobile app, making it easier for people once they value it to, hey, take a proactive approach to your health, learn exercises and do workouts before you're dealing with a problem. How would you say that you are trying to help redefine access to bike fitting? Because like I mentioned, it was unfortunate that I even came across you and like learned what I did, but what do you feel like are some of the problems that you see with people that walk in your door, and what is it that you're trying to do to help avoid some of those problems?
That's a good question. We were talking about this before, market, because it's so word of mouth oriented, and maybe on Reddit and there's Yelp, and I feel like people find me organically too because I ride in the community. But a new person finding me, they must have had a friend that recommended me or something, or they literally found me online. I think the newer people are more of a blank slate, and as long as they're open to, they come in with a bike, and then if they're trusting, it makes it much easier. Yeah, there's such a big continuum of riders. So, yeah.
The one thing that we did talk about a little bit, though, was online, like this AI bike fitting, or...
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because, hey, like you're saying, sometimes making a decision with no information can be good or bad, but I think making decisions with the wrong information can definitely be pretty costly, especially in this sport.
The AI, so yeah, I think there's a whole human component of when I'm fitting someone and listening to what they're saying and their injury history, and there's that proprioceptive component of like feedback that I'm getting from them when they're on the bike, and I can ask them certain questions, and I just think it's hard to do that. Like I was approached to do a fitting virtually for Pelotons when during the pandemic. They were like, yeah, it's tough because you can measure certain things and ask them to like look at their own foot rotation, or maybe take their own measurements, but it's self-reported and sometimes it's not as accurate.
Yeah.
And even the mechanical aspect of like fixing someone's bike, like you can strip a bolt pretty easily, you can over torque something pretty easily.
Which I've done.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's
more than once.
It's like you can measure, you can measure things, but yeah, that happens. You can measure things, but then there's also the mechanical part of adjusting the bike that I don't know how you would do with AI unless you had like robots or something, like actually doing the work. I mean, it's nice because I don't know if we also have a mechanic right next door to the shop, so it's kind of like you get a what's the word? It's like
holistic.
It's a one-stop shop. Like I do the fitting, he's doing all the mechanical work. So that's hard to do if it's AI, because you need to. You have the bike fitting side, and then it's like someone needs to do an adjustment or adjust your brakes or give you a new chain, and that's a skill that's really hard to do yourself if you're new. So
definitely.
I think there's that mechanical aspect that I feel like AI won't be. It's like there's bike fitting apps that you can kind of like I think it finds the joints, and then it like looks at the angles, and you can set your thing up on a tripod or whatever. There's a limit to it because it's looking at the side plane and it's not 3-dimensional.
Got it.
So I think it's good if you're in the middle of Nebraska and you don't have access to a bike fitter. It's better than nothing. But if you're in a city, going to a professional in their field, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of it, is tapping into expertise from someone else, especially with the triathlon training. Like we started, it's very busy. It's time consuming. And I'm at a point in my life where if it speeds up the learning and it saves me time, and then also doing it right, that's really what I value for sure. To wrap this up, I'm curious, what do your future plans look like? I know you've been very busy, but I'd love to hear, hey, what's in the plans for Dialed In Fitting as a business? And then what are some plans for you as an individual?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to continue to fit, I think. And the business has been going pretty well since the bike boom and COVID. Working with a business partner and like growing the business, I think, on that aspect. I think I'd also like to go back into teaching. So I recently was hired by a local university to teach biomechanics.
How's that going?
It's good. I mean, it's going to be good. I think it wasn't the right position because it started off virtual and then ended up being in person. But I'm looking into other opportunities to do the same thing because it takes me back to my roots, and then I can go and teach.
Nice.
Again, and use my education more so, I think, than just bike fitting is only using a very small portion of like what I did in the biomechanics lab.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go back into that, and then also interacting with students and maybe like using my fitting experience would be kind of cool to throw that in. So it's because it's more applied. And the thing with me with academia is everything was so non-applied. It was very conceptual.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to maybe go back and do something like that.
Well, it challenges you to keep learning. There's that mentor effect where if you're teaching other people, as long as you have an open mindset, you can be learning from them as you're also trying to teach them. So I think that's also been a big driver of why we still do content to this day is, hey, there's this big mentor effect where, I mean, that's how we all started. I mean, that's how we started this, was like, hey, we wanted to learn orthopedic and sports content when we were in the middle of cardiopulm and neurology content. So we're like, the best way to learn this on our own is to teach it, because if we can teach it, then we know it pretty well.
Right.
So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what about the training? Why are you doing some longer rides?
Yeah, so I'm going to be racing soon and
Nice.
doing a couple races in Utah and maybe in Colorado. And because I need a goal, I need something to train for.
Yeah.
I can't just be, sometimes the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
So I think it's good to have a goal just to train for. And then I've never had structured training, never really utilized a coach, I think. We have so many good athletes where we live in Santa Monica and the South Bay that I just kind of like try to keep up with the athletes around me.
Yeah, I'm going to have to join one of these. I'm going to have to get an
fun.
invite.
Yeah.
Because right now it's a lot of solo riding and just ebooks, but I'd like to ride more outdoors.
Sure. Ebooks, yeah.
Yeah, like audio books. It's great. You crush a lot of audio books, but I know like this upcoming race, there's a lot of elevation gain, and best way to practice that is just get outside.
It's just such a gorgeous area that we live in. Like
we're pretty fortunate too.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So I could not be on a trainer all the time.
No.
I don't do that.
People find you. How can someone reach out to Dialed In Fitting?
I'd say the best way is the website, www.dialedinfitting.com. And then all my information's on there, my phone number. People reach out to me via social media. Like I have a page, Dialed In Fitting. I get everything. Like there's so many different sources. Sometimes it's hard to keep up. Yeah. But word of mouth is really big. The organic aspect of, even if I'm on a group ride, I have people that are like, hey, I need to get in touch with you while I'm climbing. I have a bike fitting question. And I'm like, I can't breathe right now. So it's people usually like in person is actually the most organic.
Got it.
But mostly, yeah, I think. How did you get in touch with me?
Yeah, I just went digging on Google.
Yeah.
And I found you. Actually, I called a couple shops and they're like, hey, you gotta check out this lady, Lauren.
That's nice.
And I heard it from 2 different shops and I was like, okay.
She must know what she's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's doing something.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then any parting advice for our audience? Any prehabbers out there that are interested in getting into biking or they're thinking that they need a bike fit?
If you're getting into biking, a pre-fitting is the most important thing. Just so you know, like the best geometry for you and you don't waste your money and your time. And it's good. It's like, you know, you talk to someone that's more experienced and they have a lot more information. People always leave the office with like, oh my God, I learned so much. And I already know it. So for me, I'm like, okay, I mean, but I think I picked other people's brains when I first started. Like I didn't really know anything. To a current cyclist, I would say just staying relaxed in whatever activity you're doing is really important. So, because the more you tense up, the more you tend to like, you know, your body doesn't function as efficiently. So
you want to know, It was funny. You talked about the breathing earlier, like breathing exercises. Came across this method. It's popular. It was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 when you kind of need to ground yourself. And when I was running the half marathon and then even cycling hard today, it's like when you start kind of burning out, it's like, okay, think of it's like 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that it's all the senses. 3, maybe it's 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can hear or see, and then 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. Thinking through that kind of helps to distract you from like, I'm in the pain locker right now and also my lungs are burning, and it's playing with those senses. I was like, okay, I kind of like this, and
that's interesting.
I'm gonna keep doing that when I'm struggling, especially swimming. Because swimming, I'm like, I'm gonna drown, but I need to think of the other things.
Yeah, breathing is really important in the water.
All right, well, hey, thanks for tuning in today, and until next time.